Hey, this is Dominic Rivkin, Mission and Ministry Executive for the Pacific Southwest District. And we just want to resource you with some information from some amazing practitioners in mission, especially with our current reality and the changes that we're all facing. We're going to start this conversation talking about house church and what it's like to now move into this reality where the church that was gathered in a sanctuary is now gathered in a home. And some of you may have had experience with that, but many of you haven't. Maybe this past weekend was the first time you've ever had to experience something like this. But the three guys that we have on this call today, they've experienced this quite a bit, and they've been practicing with different aspects of house church and house church ministry. But we do remember, above all things, like it said in our reading this past weekend from Ephesians 5, that God calls us to be light in the world, even in the midst of present darkness. And sometimes we have to do that in unusual circumstances, in our homes, over the internet, or live streaming, or whatever it may be. But we must remember also that house church is kind of the base model for Christian community and what that looks like. So Tony Webb, who's with Vision USA, has been working this model for some time in a format that he calls GSE, which is a gather, shepherd, elder model. And in his two books that he wrote, Raising Rabbits and Not Elephants, and Gathering to Movement, he talks about what this dynamic actually looks like and how it's foundational to house church. So I just want to introduce Tony, and maybe you can give us a little bit of foundation on some of the stuff that he's been working on.
Sure. Thank you, Dominic. It's a joy to be with you on this today. So yeah, GSC has turned out to be a pretty powerful set of rails for us to run on, and we really had no idea when this started back in the mid 2000s. But the basic concept is we take this person, this man, this woman, this teenager, who the Bible calls a gatherer, and they are just pure people magnets, and the Bible speaks profoundly about them, and just everywhere. So whether it's John 1 and how Jesus gathered, or the leper in Mark 1, or the woman at the well in John 4, or even the Gadarene, the demoniac in Mark 5, they're all examples of amazing gifting from God to gather people to a mission. And that's the heart of what a gatherer does, is they gather to a mission. And they're just so gifted. They're not evangelists, so we don't necessarily put a pressure on them to share the gospel, though we're never opposed if they do. But their job is just to bring people, because they're just so good at it. So we pair them then with a shepherd, just someone who is with the gift of shepherding, who just cares for people. And things start in as little as 2 weeks when it comes to starting a new group, whether it's a church or an aspect of an existing congregation ministry. In time, if it's a new church, we want to see an elder brought in for that appropriate spiritual oversight, because we have them around the church if they're not in it. If it's something from an existing congregation, of course, it already has the elder oversight in moving ahead. But that's the GSC process in the rails which we run. And just seeing God do amazing things with it, because it's so simple, costs no money. And we're now up over 800 of these things since 2007. And it's just an absolute blast.
Wow, to see 800 of them since 2007 is pretty amazing.
Amen.
And how do you see it, or how have you seen it in this current reality really come to bear? What have been the benefits that you've seen some of your practitioners experiencing?
Well, some of the benefits, even a lot of out of calls, even this very day, has centered into two areas. One is the area of how we define church, because I think our current day is really going to challenge that definition. That if it doesn't work with 10, we might want to visit it carefully, deeply, at least have strong conversation about it. And then in addition, it really touches discipleship, because as we're able to disciple people to engage and lead, whether they're the gatherer, the shepherd, or even the elder oversight, the discipleship picture becomes very clear, very simple when we're able to run on these rails, be able to disciple towards this process becomes very simple to unpack and move ahead. And so we have seen even these last couple of days, GSE be a powerful tool to help navigate some of these brand new uncharted waters.
Yeah, that's it's kind of the experience that I even had on Sunday with my own group, and part of my home congregation was really amazing actually, and how like you said, how if it doesn't work with a small group, it's kind of hard to expand it out in that way. And I know that John Palka, who's a pastor in Venice, California, has been really, trying to work his congregation a little bit towards a more of a small group type of model. So he's instituted what he calls lay shepherds within his congregation in this current reality that kind of feeds into the house church type model. John, why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah. Thanks, Dominic. Thanks for inviting me to be here. Good to be here. Well, we just went through our first weekend with no live services, and it's Monday morning, just reflecting upon how it went. And we did provide a web-based worship experience on Sunday morning, and that was, well received. But really, the best stories and the most heartwarming stories that have come out of this weekend flow out of this network that we rapidly put together last week called our Lay Shepherd Network. We've got quite a number of active members who are lay shepherds now, and each of them has 5 to 7 households, and they've been contacting them, just providing a touch and some spiritual as well as emotional support to them. And as I've been talking with the lay shepherds and their talking about their conversations with the folks that they've contacted, and just to the conversation, they were just all tremendously pumped up and excited about the conversations they've had with their 5 to 7 households. And as I've talked with other members who are contacted by their lay members, again, just everyone is just excited, and they were just so grateful. And one person said, man, I was really down and I was just getting depressed and I didn't know what was going on. And my lay shepherd gave me a call, and it just gave me such a spiritual boost and pointed me to Christ. And it was just a human touch, and it just totally re-energized me. So great stories are coming out of that. And that's probably what I'm most excited with. And, from this point forward, it just kind of means a shift for me, in that a lot of my effort is now put into supporting these lay shepherds so that they can be out there, doing ministry and making contacts. And this whole thing was pretty easy to put in place. It's a time of crisis. People received it well, but I also think they received it well because over the last year, I've been just putting into the DNA of our congregation principles and reasons why we're moving towards what missional communities, or we call them life groups. And I think talking about the importance of these missional communities or life groups, and then actually getting them going and people experiencing them, it helped people make the jump to this new reality we're in a whole lot easier.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think that this conversation of almost decentralizing our church life from Sunday morning into the rest of the week, realizing that the Sunday morning worship experience still sits at the core of everything that we do, but what's happening throughout the rest of the week in these sort of house churches or missional communities or whatever label we end up giving them is we're forced into this new reality. So tell us a little bit more about your role then in equipping the saints for the work of ministry in this circumstance.
Well, I need to be communication intense with these lay shepherds, and so I make sure that they have accurate information so that they can transmit the best, most up-to-date information on to their households. This evening at 7 o'clock, we're having a phone conference. And so we're all getting together live. And so that'll be looking forward to that. A lot of good stories are going to come out of that. And I'm sure some questions that people have run into, they're not going to be alone in having run into these questions. So that's basically what it's doing now. And plus I'm making phone calls. So I'm making phone calls
Yeah.
to the lay shepherds. I'm shooting out emails, keeping them up to date. Before an email goes out to the congregation or all congregation emails, I'm sending that information to my lay shepherds first so that they have it, and so that they're ahead of everyone else as far as the information curve goes. And
Oh,
then
that's
just
a great idea.
getting together with them all on phone conference.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So as you're following that Second Timothy 2:2 model, right? That what you've heard from me in front of many witnesses, share with others who are able to share with others also. You're just following straight down the line that they can give it then the same information to the people they lead.
Yep.
That's really cool. That's really great. So, Nolan, I know that Nolan Kim has been involved in missional community type house church ministry for some time as well. And Nolan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience in this, your former experience, and then your new experience in this current situation? Oh, let me unmute you there.
Oh,
There you go.
there we go. Yeah, we've been doing, well, thanks for you guys sharing. It's an honor to be here. We've been doing house church, missional community stuff for like a year and a half now. And we're still figuring this out. The COVID-19 thing really threw us for a loop. And so, yeah, we're just trying new things and still trying to figure it out. You know, I think something that I shared last time, I can't get the thought out of my head is like, how are we going to remember this in a decade and 2 decades? How are we going to share it with our kids? And is it going to be the time where we just shifted life online for a little while and panicked and we didn't have toilet paper or was it time we like really had to become more creative and more intentional and got more present with ourselves and our family, you know, to where our lives won't look the same ever again, even when life does resume normal, you know? And so that's just been kind of a thought through my head, through my personal life. And so we've been just kind of thinking through that and how we do that with our neighbors. So like our literal neighbors, and just thinking, what are their needs? And like, we have like a group text, like where we all talk, cause that's how we communicate our potlucks and everything that we do. And just have been, as people need toilet paper or paper towels or whatever, we have a lot of elderly in our area. We've been able to like make deliveries. There's new neighbors that we haven't met, neighbors we've been inviting for a year that haven't come. And so we just recently did handwritten notes and 1 roll of toilet paper and just left our contact information. Like, hey, like, nice to meet you. Love to, I mean, if you have any needs, let us know. Like, we kind of have this collaboration going on. And so as we've met people's needs, I can think of a few people in particular. They're just like, I don't even think they are Christian, and they're just like, hey, let us know if you need help. If you need help making deliveries, if you need financial help, like, we're in, you know. And so it's begun developing these relationships with people in the midst of that. So that's one of the main things we do. I still meet with a group of men. We meet on Sunday mornings. And really that's about like empowering them to do this in their own neighborhood. And so I think, yeah, just an opportunity to connect people to their actual neighbors is huge. I think it's going to be big if this lasts a long time, you know, how to lean on each other financially and for basic needs. I think we empower our people instead of like running a service. We empower people to sort of do their own Sabbath on Sundays, turning their phone off for like a couple hours or whatever and just connecting and enjoying time, and then creating spaces to share. Someone was sharing about it, just to share about the fear and what's going on right now. So creating spaces. I had my first panic attack last week, which I've never had, which was not an awesome experience. And just being able to talk it out, what I was actually fearful of, actually was able to help calm it down along with some breathing. And so just creating spaces for people to share that. But yeah, I think it's an opportunity to be really creative. We have people that now Netflix and Facebook have the watch party thing. Like, people still want to connect relationally, so you can watch a movie together. We sort of figured out how to do like games and board games online in a kind of a creative way. Like our people are just really creative. Like I didn't come up with those. People are like, oh, we did this. I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. And so just like asking our people for ideas and what they're doing has been really, really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
that's amazing.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
the other thing, Thriven's been helping us. I talked to them last week, so I thought I'd offer you all the resource. If you have Thrivent members or you're a Thrivent member, they have these things called action teams, and so you get a $250 gift card. So we've been able to use that to catalyze some of the needs in our neighborhood, and then start an ongoing pot. And so yeah, I talked to the lady at corporate. Usually it takes 3 weeks to get through. They're fast forwarding it to 2 weeks now,
Okay.
to get those things going. And you can do multiples for like to meet needs, she said, but maybe stagger the dates, maybe this side of the street and that side of the street, and involving different volunteers. um, they'd love to be a part of that and meeting people's needs during this time. So
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. There's something about like the house church missional community model that really pushes you into the more of the one-to-one type of ministry. I think I found, even when I was church planting, we started on that level as well of just doing ministry in a sense, house to house on our street. Getting to meet everybody, getting to know everybody, having barbecues. I mean, all the kind of typical stuff that you do to even lead to a larger church plant. But to keep it in this on that level, to keep it on the house level, I think is really, really powerful, especially when you're dealing with like what you're talking about, Nolan, when you yourself are going through anxiety and that you have that close community to work through it, to work through some of those struggles together. I think that benefit of house church or missional community is something that you don't get sometimes in a larger church or in the more traditional models of church. Does that make sense?
yeah, totally. I
Yeah,
think, I mean, and people seem to be hungry for that, I think in
yeah,
uncertain times right now. And I always think of like the early Acts church, and I mean, the funny thing is like they didn't have Bibles the way that we know it today,
hmm
so
hmm
I'm always like, what did like devotional, what did like worship look like for them?
yeah, yeah. What did it mean where it says, that they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and there were thousands of them? Well, they
Yeah,
weren't all gathered together in thousands. So how did
yeah.
they transmit the apostles' teaching in small groups that were meeting together in homes, as it says in Acts chapter 2? I think that, going forward from this point, I think is going to be really interesting, kind of what you were talking about. And I'd love just to wrap our call with that is like, Tony, where do you see things moving forward from this point in house church and GSE? And, what is this current experience in your view? Where's it going to lead us next?
Well, that's a great question. I believe it's going to lead us to, Lord willing, a new normal where we're going to be able to really unlock and release the church family to live into all these men and women's specific gifting. And that's going to be a beautiful day to
Yeah.
just continue to release our church family to either whether gather, shepherd, or whatever role they are, who they are.
Mhm.
Just let them live into it, empower it, bless it, and just watch what the Holy Spirit does, because it's going to be, as it always is, utterly amazing and fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. And that, yeah, the saints of the church are going to be equipped for the work of ministry, just like it says in Ephesians 4. And it's upon all of us to really do that equipping work now in a time like this where we can be in tighter community, where like guys like you, John, can be, on that call with 16 leaders, right? Equipping those saints for work of ministry. John, where do you see things going after this?
Well, I think the gravitational pull of the way that we did things before the crisis hit is going to be placing an enormous pull on us. And I think so we're going to have to, and that's going to be a challenge. And, that pull to just go back to what we were doing as if nothing happened, to get back to maybe what, people would consider as the gold standard of the way it was. I think God is working just mightily in his church, and he's teaching us new aptitudes and new perspectives. And I think when this whole crisis is over, it would do us well to seriously reflect upon and discuss the lessons learned, and perhaps make some different plans going forward. Because if we don't do that, we're just going to default back into what we were doing before.
Exactly. I think that the inclination to default back to what was happening before in a more complacent church is something that it's a distinct threat moving forward after this. And what I pray is that what people are inspired by is that tight community, so that when they do gather in larger group community, they see value in both. So it's not just the Sunday morning experience that is the center of their church life, but it's both. It's both the gathered and the scattered community. What do you think, Nolan? What are you thinking about what's next here?
I think what's next for the future here is moving from I think a posture of we sort of put this on for our people to a posture of receiving, and so instead of just give and what can we do, we're moving to a place of where we need to receive, which is just as generous. That psychology supports that, to receive from people, because we're gonna be in need, I think, financially. And our people are so creative, with the things they come. I mean, they're at home with their kids, bored out of their mind. They're coming up with really creative things that we can utilize and don't have to innovate. We can depend on them and see what's going on. And I see the home thing, the quarantine thing, sort of being this awesome way to connect with people we don't know, and to really raise our future leaders, after this. So.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a great opportunity where we see those leaders sort of bubble up, right, in a time of crisis, and people really stepping up and taking the leadership roles, just like all of you have done. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate our conversation, and as brief as it is, but it helps, I think, our churches really get a sense of what it's like to step into this reality and step in boldly. And many of you out there who are watching this video, you've had to do this last weekend. And so now you've gotten past the initial fear of it. And now it's into, okay, what's next? And how can I even make this better this coming Sunday? And what I would encourage you to is, if you're doing something like live streaming a regular service, which is great, also be about connecting people in small groups in a place where they can start to talk and connect. So more of that little bit of house church model online, and see if it doesn't benefit things in the long run. If you do have something like life groups or small group leaders, or even an elder network within your church, really activate them to gather your people into those more that more tight community. And I think what you'll see, like Tony's talking about, you'll see those natural gatherers and shepherds come together, and you get to step into the beautiful work of eldering and equipping the saints for the work of ministry. I want to thank you for watching this video, and our next one's going to be about Holy Week experiences and what that might look like in the next couple weeks here. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.